Let's move on to Yankees Astros. Zarilla, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Of course, we didn't know who was going to be in this series, Yankees or Guardians, but on the Yankee side, the hardest thing to figure out with them is how they're going to set up their pitching for this series. And the challenge there would be, okay, yeah, you find a way, move on. Do you go to another starter at some point later in the game? And for the Guardians, we set up the point that, hey, well, they're going to be able to still throw out two pitchers in those first two games in Houston and sort of figure it out. They could hang in there and you could still maybe find value on Cleveland. Well, now that the Yankees are there, they're going to Talion again in this spot. He was going to pitch recently. If you don't know, he was going to pitch game 5. Then they got the rain out, so Cortez pitched game 5. So now he's back, and he's going up against Justin Verlander for game 1. So how do you pick this apart with the Yankees on the money line tonight? Let me get it here on BetMGM. Yankees on the money line. I apologize. I've got Phillies, Padres up. There it is, plus 155 Yankees tonight.
Yeah, so the thing that's impossible to quantify is something that I don't think we've seen often, and that is the Yankees having to get on a plane and fly to Houston right after celebrating a series win, because they have a game one day after the next with no off days in between. They also played 4 out of the past 5 days against the Guardians as well, had to use 3 of their key relievers in the past 4 days. So the Yankees bullpen a bit tired. Maybe their players a bit tired in general, hopping on a plane last night after celebrating, getting into Houston against the team who has been off since the weekend. So you can't quantify that. Certainly have to bump Houston probably 1 or 2 percentage points in your mind, though, just in terms of rest and in terms of travel, because that can be pretty grueling. It is like taking off after a Sunday night game and going to play the next day. And Sunday night teams struggled on Mondays this year. In terms of how I'd bet it, I do have a position on the Astros, so I'm not looking to hedge on the Yankees personally. If I did not have a bet on the Astros already, I would want to bet on the Yankees here probably. I projected the series price around minus 130 for Houston. You can get as high as plus 170, plus 180 out there on the Yankees. So there is value in their series number, but I would probably wait until after game 1 when you'll likely find a better price, because this is the biggest favorite that I will make either team in this series is in game 1 with Justin Verlander going against Jameson Taillon. Verlander 2.6 expected ERA this season, Taillon at 4.2, so a pretty big gap in the starting pitching there. Obviously, I said the Yankees have a banged up bullpen coming in today as well. So it's probably the largest gap that I'll see between these two bullpens in the series, unless one team ends up using their key relievers for multiple days in a row. Both teams really struggled against right-handed pitching down the stretch. They both rated around the league average after the trade deadline, both roughly at 199 in terms of WRC plus. So I would actually lean to the under 7 in here. If I can get an under 7 at minus 110, that would be a bet for me. And under 6.5 at around plus 105 would be in the same territory. I would definitely take a look at the unders. Have not seen the umpiring situation yet. The Yankees do have the better of the pitch type matchup against these two starting pitchers. They ranked in the top 5 against fastballs, curveballs, and sliders, which is basically what encompasses 95% of Verlander's pitch mix. So I actually don't mind the matchup for the Yankees offense. Obviously, the Astros getting the weaker starting pitcher to face. So there are some players I'm going to look at from a prop perspective, but I do think that this game goes under the 7. In terms of the money line side, I would need plus 178 or better to bet the Yankees here. Projected them at plus 163. As I said, though, that's not quantifying for travel and rest. So maybe you bump the Yankees just a little bit higher. Would want them at around plus 178 on a normal day, though. And then in terms of the under, I need minus 110 at under 7 or plus 105 at 6.5.
Okay, very good. Looking over at the I'm on MLB Game Day now, just trying to find the no word on umpires, but I went down this rabbit hole. Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, they don't have great history against Verlander historically. Mm-hmm. Judge has a home run, but in 13 at-bats, Stanton's 0 for 3.
And a lot of the Yankees have struggled against Verlander. I believe his OPS allowed is around 515 or 550 against them. The two guys who stood out, though, as having good matchups, I said, against the fastball, curveball, slider, Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo. Those are the two guys I'm going to take a look at from a player prop perspective.
Okay, very good. Colin Whitchurch, with all being known now how the Yankees might try and stack up their pitching with Taillon going today against Verlander, and just to give folks a sense of how the money's coming in over on the Action app, 60% of the money coming in on the Yankees money line, 58% of the total bets, though, on Houston.
Yeah, and that makes sense because it seems like a very sharp versus square matchup. It also seems like we could be due for one of those very classic you can't predict baseball moments. Like, this just seems like the most obvious game we're going to have in the probably all postseason long. It's Justin Verlander against Jameson Taillon. The Astros are huge favorites. They should be huge favorites. So maybe there's value on the Yankees because it's baseball. And, you know, I hate to be this vague about it on a podcast where we are breaking down the analytics, but it's Verlander against Taillon. And anything can happen because the Yankees have an elite offense. Verlander was not good in his one playoff start this year against the Mariners. There's no reason that the Yankees can't win this game. It's not like Taillon is some quad A fodder. This is an established major league starting pitcher. All of that said, I am staying away from the money line on this game. As Zerillo mentioned, I would probably need the Yankees at a little bit higher plus number to take them. I am in disagreement with Sean a little bit on the total, though, which always makes me nervous because Sean has had a very hot October. But I am playing the over on this game. Over 7 at plus money right now seems a good value. We talked about the Yankees pitching struggles. Taillon is a rough matchup for the Houston offense, and the Yankees bullpen is absolutely depleted. I could see this being one of those games where it's hovering under the total early, and then the bullpens get in the mix, and it pushes us over our total. But it's actually funny because we're sitting here and we're saying, well, the Astros are gonna crush Taillon. The Astros beat the Mariners in 3 games. We remember that. It's not like their offense was lights out in those 3 games. It took them 18 innings to score a run in game 3. They needed some Yordan Alvarez heroics in both games 1 and 2 to even win those games. So it was a 3-game sweep where all 3 games they could have very, very easily lost. But I do think this is a get-right situation for them against Taillon. And given Verlander struggles in the first game of the playoffs, and we talked about Verlander all season long, obviously probably going to win the AL Cy Young. Amazing ERA, expected indicators say he was quite a bit lucky in that ERA. Yeah. So I trust the Yankees offense, even with short rest. I'm not worried about whether or not they're going to win the game, but I think they're going to score runs off Verlander and the Houston bullpen. So I like the over in this game. I think the Yankees are going to score runs against Verlander and the Houston pen. I think Houston's offense is going to break out after a long rest against Taillon, and the Yankees' depleted bullpen. Over 7, as long as it's in plus money, is something I'm targeting tonight.
So let me ask you this too, and I'll ask Zerillo too. From a bigger picture perspective, we did a little series breakdown with the odds over at BetMGM for Phillies and Padres. As far as a series correct score, do you have a feel on this yet? By looking at some of the numbers, the shortest number is Astros in 6 at plus 350. Also, I'm pretty sure you mentioned Zach Wheeler to win NLCS MVP. He's now the 3rd favorite to, pardon me, not the 3rd favorite. He's at plus, oh yes, he is. He's at plus 850.
He was plus 14. He was 14-1 before game 1. So yeah, definitely love that potential bet. As far as a correct score, I don't have a strong feeling on any of these prices. You know, Yankees in 7 at plus 500. Astros in 7 at plus 400. This does feel like a 7-game series to me. I know everyone says Houston has this strong advantage given the rest and the pitching, but you know, the Yankees aren't going to go quietly. They didn't go quietly against Cleveland. Obviously, Houston is a different animal than Cleveland, but they'll have Garrett Cole going at some point. They'll have Nestor Cortez going again at some point later in the series. Houston's vulnerable. We say they have all these advantages with rest and whatnot, but again, it's not like they went out there and beat the crap out of the Mariners. They won 3 very, very tight games. Mm-hmm. Now they're rested. Will they be able to break out in this series? We'll see.
Zerillo, you have any big picture thoughts on the series? I'm trying to get the here we go. Over at BetMGM, Yankees plus 150 for the series. Astros minus 185. Is this one of those spots? This is reminding me of the NBA playoffs last year when I was hosting Heat Check. It's reminding me of like, okay, let game 1, if we think Houston has an edge here, let game 1 play out. Houston, maybe Verlander goes out there and shoves, and Houston wins this game convincingly. maybe not dominate, but Verlander looks good. They get enough runs in. Yankees offense looks tired. Then you go get the Yankees. I would assume that's a good angle too.
Yeah, Seth, I projected this at plus 130 for the series before game one. So there's certainly value on the Yankees now. I just expect to find a similar edge on them after game two. Even if they lose and the price is going to inflate, this is the biggest starting pitching gap, the biggest bullpen gap that I expect to see between these two teams in the series, given it's the number 1 versus number 4 starter. And the Yankees bullpen is coming in a little bit banged up after pitching multiple days in a short stretch. I certainly think the Phillies in 6 is the way that I like the NLCS series playing out. I gave that out on Green Dot Daily yesterday. You would get Nola and Wheeler going in game, or I should say Wheeler than Nola going in games 5 and 6 respectively. So I like them to close that out in 6. And then I would say Yankees in 7 is how I would target the ALCS if I see the Yankees as the value side, getting Garrett Cole starting in game 3, and then probably going again in game 7 is where I see the Yankees potentially stealing this series. So Yankees in 7, Phillies in 6, how I would go from an exact games prop.
As long as the weather cooperates in Philadelphia and New York, your logic makes perfect sense. Because as we found out, the weather can be a problem in these baseball playoffs.